This is, again, the Monetiser track sponsored by Unity. And the next panel coming up is, what do you do in the inevitable decline of ad revenue? It's going to happen, so what are you going to do about it? Our moderator will be Rick Cowley from PocketGamer.biz. Yay, Rick! Happy to see you again. And he will go ahead and introduce his fine list of panelists. We'll just need to get him on. Well, speak of the devil, there he is. Hi, Rick.
Hello.
So tell us, who are the panelists that you'll be introducing today?
Well, I will allow the panel to introduce themselves. But first of all, I just want to say hello, yes. My name is Rick Cowley. I'm the editor of PocketGamer.biz, and I will be moderating this panel discussing the what do you do in the inevitable decline of ad revenue. I think everyone's in their video homes now. So let's get started with introducing the panel. Let's go first with Ilya.
Hi everyone, my name is Ilya, obviously. I work at Unity in the monetization team, and I'm responsible for helping our publishers get set up with the monetization product, and basically I'm the client partner.
Cool. Michelle? Michelle, you're muted.
Hi, I'm with Rocket Rod. I work with developers and publishers, helping them get funding for their games, develop their games overall, and just make fun content for all platforms, really.
Awesome. And Martine.
Hi, my name is Martine Spaans. I'm a mobile game publisher of free-to-play casual games. We focus on hidden object, match 3, time management, typically games for women 30+, monetized heavily by ads.
Awesome. So yeah, we're going to be talking about the decline of ad revenue and what that means and all that kind of thing. First of all, I always like to start with a big general question. I kind of want to ask, what's the current state of ads and advertising and revenues in general? Are we seeing high revenues? Are we seeing low revenues? Like, what's going on with ads at the moment? Anyone feel free to jump in on that one. Ilya, yeah?
I can start, yeah. So here at Unity, what we see is that after the whole COVID situation, of course, a lot of people started playing games more, spending time at home in a bigger extent. So yeah, we see a growth, but we believe it's a temporary growth, which will come back to a decline. But again, the plateau that we expect will be higher than it was before COVID because more people got introduced to gaming.
Okay.
I can share some thoughts on it also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, over the last few months, I guess what we saw is kind of a general trend that I also heard from other developers, where we saw that the downloads of the games, that went up, but then the eCPMs kind of dropped because a lot of advertisers were like very, very hesitant to spend their budgets. So eCPMs went down a little bit. So it was basically, uptrending and downtrending, kind of canceling each other out. So in the end, when you look at the result of our games, it's kind of the same as before.
You're hearing the same from our developers across the board, from on mobile, on console, and on PC. So
cool. One of the things I was kind of wondering, because I kind of want to attack like the topic in general that we're talking about in sort of this inevitable decline thing. One of the things I was kind of wondering is, like, are we going to, like, is a decline inevitable for every game no matter what the situation is? Are you always expecting to see growth and decline? I mean, I guess there's a little sort of roller coaster sort of type thing, and it fluctuates, but do you always expect to see revenues decline at some point?
I think it really much depends on the genre and the refresh rate of the audience in the game. So if we take like a basic look at how algorithms work, it's like placing a billboard in a specific section of the airport, where you know that this wing travels to like really expensive destination and this wing travels to cheaper destinations. And when you have the same people going through the same wing, you kind of understand, okay, this placement specific billboard has to be more expensive, or this one has to be more cheap. So when a publisher or game developer does not invest a lot into updating their audience, or like increasing the factors in the game that affect their retention rate, which algorithms then pick up, then the ad revenues, or especially eCPMs, will go down. If you start increasing your game, improving your game, then once algorithms see that you provide users that have really good retention rates, or like have some spending behavior, or in general really loyal to the brand or the game, then the eCPMs will naturally go up. So I wouldn't say that ad revenue decline is inevitable. There are ways to avoid it, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think it depends too on how far out you plan your game as well. So if your game has for example, a 10-year tail, which is a lot, but if you always keep your players engaged, I don't think. I mean, eventually, yeah, for sure, yeah, there'll be a decline in ad revenue, but it'll take a lot longer to get there. Sorry, everybody's messaging me at once. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm also like, is the decline really inevitable? As I said in my introduction, we monetize heavily by ads and mostly by rewarded videos. So people will get something in return for watching an ad. And as long as we make sure that the content is worth it and that there's still enough interesting content in the game, then we see that our players are happy to like keep watching, engaging with ads in exchange for that. So it's only as sort of inevitable as the inevitable sort of decline of the game itself. If someone's been in a casual game for 2 or 3 years, then at some point they're gonna let go and say goodbye to the game and start something new. And then obviously the ad revenue from that specific user is going to go down. But in the meantime, we've had 2-3 years to amass new users, with new ad revenue opportunities. So in that sense, I'm not sure if it's completely inevitable.
Cool. So yeah, so that's just sort of a general thing, and then obviously, as Ilya mentioned, we're seeing the effects of COVID-19 impacting ad revenues and seeing a growth because people are at home, they're staying in, playing games and watching more ads. And then we're kind of, I guess there's a bigger problem now where we're seeing economic decline across the world because of businesses not going and all that kind of thing. And now there's predictions of maybe we're going to see ad revenues decline as people start going back to work, as people have less money. Well, I guess ad revenue isn't affected by people having money to spend, but you know what I'm sort of getting at. Is now the time to sort of start preparing for that? Should developers start being more cautious about this decline, like coming imminently, or is there maybe still a bit of time left where developers can sort of not have to worry about it too much? I don't know.
I mean, I'm happy to also comment a little bit on this one. At the start of the pandemic, when a lot of companies were sort of not really sure what to do, we feared that there would be a massive decline in eCPM because of a lot of companies are like withdrawing their budget, and there was a little bit of that, as I said before, but it wasn't as bad as we thought. Actually, last month we had one of our best months ever in terms of eCPMs, where we saw for rewarded video ads placements that had up to $40 eCPMs. And we know you hit that, it's not going to be like that forever, but we enjoyed that ride for as long as it lasted. And will there be, I mean, you see like a lot of speculations. For example, also here in the news, they do a lot of speculation that the housing market will drop, because of the whole situation. But there's also been speculation that the stock market will drop. And if you read back the news of 3 months ago, that should have already happened, but it's not there yet. So it's also the question, like, will it happen now? And it's also, of course, good to keep in mind and to prepare for a scenario like that. But then again, I wouldn't sort of put all the eggs in that basket, and I wouldn't sort of take it as a given that there will be a decline in that. I've sort of during the previous economic recession, like was that 10 years ago or something? I forgot the exact timing on that. I think it was like 12 years ago already. But anyway, I was already also working in the game industry back then. And then we also, within the gaming ecosystem, we didn't really sort of have much of an impact, whereas other industries were hit much, much harder. because there's always a need for entertainment, and especially relatively cheap entertainment like a game on your mobile phone. So I guess in that sense, as weird as it sounds, when I told my mom I want to pursue a career in the gaming industry, she thought that this was going to be a very, very uncertain future. But I think in a strange sense, the gaming business is just much more stable than we give it credit for.
I really want to support Martine's point here about people looking for entertainment or source of entertainment in dark times. And when I studied the credit crunch of 2007 and 2008, I noticed that there was a huge surge of music industry. And back then, music industry was at its peak without having all the streaming services. So concerts and spend on songs and albums was really high. And people were finding the retreat in music. What we have nowadays is what back then we didn't have, which is mobile gaming, which is really accessible. And I believe that this is where people will go to kind of get away from the troubles, at least for some time. Although, well, we can expect that there will be no troubles, but we can assume that there will be some recession, looking at the numbers nowadays. And yes, I truly believe that gaming will be this, I like calling it a retreat, but a way or a means of relaxing and getting back to norms. And we see it with people going to gaming while being locked down. And once the lockdown is lifted, they kind of got already accustomed to the whole concept of being a gamer, of a casual gamer, or at least spending 5 minutes a day. And over time, they will grow into bigger gamers, get more professional. And I think in the end, this will kind of balance out the negative economical impact on the industry by increasing the sample size or the number of users. So yeah, I believe there will either be a growth or kind of balanced out situation. I truly don't believe there will be a huge decline on the market.
I agree with Ilya as well, because trends have changed. A lot more people that have never really gotten into games before are. And there's people that maybe only played mobile that play PC now or play others. And then if with that comes, maybe esports will be even bigger. I don't know. And with that comes more ad opportunities. So we'll see what happens. But it's definitely changed in the past 6 months. So.
Cool. I do want to move on sort of from the general thing, but I do have a question in the Q&A that I think is interesting on this sort of topic of COVID-19. Anonymous attendee asks, many players have started playing their first game due to COVID-19, and would ad networks value games which bring players into the general gaming ecosystem? I guess more than other games. But yeah, does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I would say one thing that, at least from a Unity perspective, that our network is heavily unbiased. So whenever there's a new source, we don't really prioritize it. So we learn on it, and then once we see that, so it depends on what the question is about. Is it about how the algorithm works, or is it about whether we will focus on working with new games? So no, we're a purely agnostic company. So we would not prioritize a game or a developer just because they're new to the market. It's all about quality and equal market, fair market.
There is actually another question. I think it's from the same person, but it's still anonymized, asking what parameters do ad network algorithms look at in a game?
That's a corporate secret, which goes off.
Well, it was worth
but
a try.
In general, the most basic ones are, of course, retention rate and engagement and legitimacy. So our biggest enemy is fraud, and luckily we have find ways to fight it. But yeah, if you look like a real human being and if you act in games, this is what's respected by ad networks.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I think probably we'll move on from there. So actually thinking about what the steps to take are for if you do see a decline in ad revenue, what are some common mistakes that developers make when they see that their ad revenues decline that they should avoid sort of instantly doing? Martina, if you have any ideas on that?
I do. Yeah, working with loads of different teams, I kind of see that most of them have, when they see that ad revenues decline, there's sort of a panic reaction. So like, oh, that doesn't work anymore, let's throw it overboard. And then, you know, they just kind of rip out like all ad placements, you know, and then of course like drop the ad revenue completely. Whereas what they probably should do is look at why the ad placements are not working anymore. You know, is it because people click less on certain offers? Is it because certain game points are not interesting anymore and certain rewards are less interesting because of that? Or is it because you know, for example, if you have an interstitial ad between every level, and in the beginning levels are really short, and then they see like relatively a lot of interstitial ads, but then later as they progress through the game, the levels become like progressively harder and longer, and of course they're going to see less interstitials. So you know, it could be because of things like that. So yeah, that's, you know, I always try to sort of calm developers down and tell them like, well, you know, it's not so much that ads are just like suddenly not working anymore. It could be like your placements are just not interesting anymore. And then of course there's also like seasonal things that come into play, you know, like for example, Christmas and ECPMs go a little bit up, or in January they go a little bit down. So you know, there's usually quite a logical explanation for it, and a reasonable solution.
One of the mistakes I've seen was spamming your game with placements, like creating as many as possible and trying to increase the impression amount. But normally it doesn't work. And algorithms are quite smart, so they see that you're trying to increase the amount of impressions by not increasing the engagement rates. So backing up Martine's point, yes, you should look at engagement rates for sure. And the biggest mistake is when you think that having more will bring you more success. No, don't spam your game with ad placements. Most importantly, find a balance and try to integrate this into your gameplay. So if we talk about rewarded video ads, they should be very natural. They should feel organic, and actually you want to make sure that users want to see an ad in your game. They actually wait for it. They wait for this timer to finish so that they can see it again. And I've seen many good idle games that implemented it well, specifically Cody games. Like, they've done a great job. And I know people that play their idle like tycoon games. They're like, oh, I'm actually skipping those ad placements because I know that the next one is more beneficial for me. So when you have players that are that smart and that they see this distinction, I think you're on the right path. So try to make this whole ad watching game actually a game inside the game. I think, yeah.
Michelle, any?
I would just say, yeah, I've seen the same thing where they add more ads in or they take them out. And I think the key to making your game successful with ads is to add more customized ads that players want to see and feel valuable.
That goes into like the whole segmentation topic. Like,
Yep.
yeah, that's the next level of right way of doing ad monetization for sure.
Well, yeah, that sort of brings me on to like, I don't know if it does. So, you know, you've got specific kinds of ads and you're seeing them working. Would you diversify the kinds of ads that you've got in your game? Like you've got saying about interstitials and increasing them or lowering them. Would you start introducing like new kinds of ads, like rewarded video ads, like Martina knows a lot about? I know, or yeah. Michelle?
Oh, I thought Martina was gonna go. I think it's specific or as player specific ads as possible, whatever they may be. If you're using Google Big Data or whatever platform you use, as long as it appeals to the players that you're trying to target, it doesn't matter, I think. But I think other people have had experience using different things.
Yeah, of course, we see that ECPMs on rewarded video are higher than on interstitials. That's why it makes sense to, you know, to put rewarded videos in. But, you know, a mistake also commonly made is then just to disregard interstitials like they're worth nothing. But that's not true because we're still getting like $10 ECPMs on those as well. and people can click them away after 5 seconds. So, it's like when you just won a level and you have that moment of like, whew, before you know that those 5 seconds are already over, you can naturally sort of progress. So, it's still sort of, a good addition to the money stream. Talking to diversify the kinds of ads. I guess that's also like something I said in my previous points. We're just testing out a lot of placements and see what sticks and see what works. And we typically try to aim for a certain amount of ads per gameplay session. For example, a game where we see that the players on average play for about 20 minutes per gameplay session. We think it's fair to then serve the 3 to 4 ads. Because it's like an ad every few minutes, and it's not too intrusive. Compared to other media like TV or radio, where you have like lots more ads per minute on average, and it doesn't sort of get to that annoyance level, but it still makes a profitable revenue stream for us.
And I truly agree. Again, it depends on the genre. Having diversified kinds of ad placements is very important, but in addition, there was this case study we did before where we tested if adding interstitial ads into like a casual between mid-core game, has it impacted the retention rate or engagement in a negative way? And no, actually it didn't. It increased the number of players in the game, while it hasn't heavily impacted the retention. So it depends on where you place the ads. You don't want to make interstitial ads too intrusive, too much interrupting the gameplay. But having both is not necessarily damaging to the gameplay. Having them both very badly implemented, yeah. But again, A/B testing everything, from the places in the game where you put ads to the length of them. Like from my experience, I know some publishers that are going really deep and deciding whether to do 5-second or 6-second interstitials, and they see big difference in the retention rates. So testing even such I wouldn't say minor things, but they're quite important from an ad network perspective. But from most of the publishers' perspective, it's like a small difference, so they don't pay attention to it. But it affects. It's the psychology. So testing everything will lead you to the right path.
Got quite a few questions coming in on the Q&A section. Thank you for everybody contributing. One, which I think would jump on real quick. Somebody would like to know, Michelle, if you could give some more details on what you mean by customizing ads and custom ads specific for certain players, I guess.
So, for example, let's say you have a cooking game, right? And the person that's playing this game obviously thinks cooking is fun. So maybe you have an ad for, this is just the US, or Williams-Sonoma, or something that makes sense to them, something that you'd be interested in is what I would think. Because it's like, if you're playing a cooking game, I mean, you may be interested in soccer/football, but I don't know, but you are playing a cooking game, so you probably are into cooking. That's what I would say in regards to making it more player specific.
Cool. We've got Don Creek, who is very curious to hear about people's opinions on audio ads. I don't know if this is audio specific or if an ad contains audio. I get my sort of feeling and experience would be that audio ads wouldn't do particularly well, because I mean, a lot of people, as far as I know, play mobile games on mute. But if anyone has any opinions about audio, Ilya, you seem to be nodding quite vigorously on this one.
I quite recently actually read, I listened to a podcast, and there was this transcript, and there was discussion on having actual audio ads in the game. Mm-hmm. I think there was a startup, I don't remember the name, that tries to implement that. It sounds interesting, but I don't believe it's going to bring a lot of engagement, because I think audio ads in general is the thing of the past, the radio stations. And it doesn't really let you engage with the content. You don't see it. But I don't know. When I first heard this idea, it sounded interesting, especially for like, I don't know, advertising playlists or artists on Spotify or any other music streaming service. But in games, that's true. I know that a lot of publishers are concerned, for example, when They want the ads to be muted, but for some reason they're not, because they know that. Let's imagine I don't know, a student in a class who, well, for some reason decides to play a game while the teacher is explaining something, which is it happens a lot, and then suddenly there's like, ooh, download this game now, and the whole class is like, what's happening? So you want to avoid situations like that. That's why a lot of people indeed play games without sound. So yeah, sound in ads is dangerous.
Yeah, I would say how many people browse their social media with the sound on. I don't know very many.
That's why they even do those, squared format videos with all the text written, because they know that you're not listening to it. So yeah, it makes sense.
Martina, any thoughts on audio in ads?
I mean, since like mobile gaming is such a visual medium, I'm kind of wondering how that should work. I think interestingly enough, the meeting set up this week through the Meet to Match system with someone who knows a lot more about audio ads, and kind of curious what they'll tell me. The only kind of example that I can think of is, it's not a mobile game, but I think it was in is it the last or the second to last like Fallout game, where there was like also a radio station available, and I think through you could like turn it on and off whenever you wanted, and through that radio station they were also playing sort of fake ads. I think it was in GTA as well, and there's like really, really funny ones in GTA about the monstrosity truck, for example, is like a classic one. But those were fake ads, but I could imagine that in a game like that, it could also work for real ads, perhaps. But yeah, I'm not sure if that would have the same experience in a mobile game.
Yeah, one of the follow-up questions from Dan, he was curious to hear if you think the message of an ad will stick if it's in audio, or if it's better suited to text, I suppose. So I guess that, Martine, I guess like if you're just hearing it in a radio thing, is that ad actually going to stick in your head afterwards, or is it better to have that visual medium?
As long as the jingle is annoying enough, yeah, sure. I mean, it's all about repetition, right? It's all about just like that sort of repeating thing. If you hear something for like 10 times in a day, it's going to stick.
Cool. Yeah, there's just lots of questions. I'm just sorting through some of these. Thank you, Dan, for your interest in this topic of audio ads. I'm going to move on to something a little bit different. We do have a question. Could banner ad eCPMs increase because of COVID-19 if companies increase their ad spend on it to achieve low CPIs and CPCs?
I think the opposite, to be honest, because a lot of banner ads are brand ads. They're retail companies that are getting most of their revenues from, I don't know, outside of game revenues. So because those industries were heavily impacted, I don't think they have, that's again, my opinion, not specifically Inti's opinion, but like travel companies, everything that relies on text and just clicking or seeing the brand name, because the consumer spend may go down, I assume that the revenues, eCPMs will go down on banners. But if games go deeper into banner advertising, then this may change. So again, it's a yes and no question, and I don't think there is an answer, either yes or no. We'll see.
Time will tell.
Yeah.
Got another question here that someone's very keen on us answering. Will in-app bidding help mitigate ad revenue decline?
Does that refer to header bidding?
It just says in-app bidding. If the anonymous attendee would like to clarify in the chat, then please do. Let's assume so, Ilya. So
from what I heard again from publishers is, if they have a team that's really experienced in managing their waterfalls and mediation, ad monetization in general, then in-app bidding doesn't really help them in increasing the yield from ads. It helps people that don't have experience, that don't have the resources to manage ad monetization. But if we look at the market overall, I think it will increase overall. Yeah, it will increase CPMs in market, because more games will start making more money on ads. Eventually, increasing the market eCPM, not just game specific, but the market eCPM. Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to stick with some audience questions because there's quite a few of them, so I'd like to get through as many as those as possible. We've got one here. In your experience, have you found that incentivizing users to view ads in order to multiply, say, collected in-game currency / rewards? Sorry, didn't take a breath. I'll try that one again. In your experience, have you found that incentivizing users to view ads in order to multiply collected in-game currency still works, or is this old news? So I guess this is sort of at the end. You played a game, you've got your rewards, and then it comes up saying ×2 if you watch a video.
Short answer,
yeah.
yes. As long as you make sure that the reward is worth it. You know, first of all, the user needs to know what it is. You mean if they just like fresh come into the game, play level 1, get 10 coins, they're like, well, great, what do I do with these coins? I don't know. You know, then the user doesn't know the value yet of what they're getting, and then it won't work. But if they know the value of it, if they know they're going to need like 100 coins to unlock the next building in their game or something, and at that point, like, you know, they have 80 coins and they just earn 10, and they know they're going to get 10 more by, you know, multiplying by watching that ad, then yeah, they're going to go for it. So, you know, as long as you make sure that the user knows the value and it's really worth it to do something to them, you know, that's why I said 10 coins instead of 1, because progressing with like just 1 coin at a time, they're like, oh, I need 100. 1 is nothing. So, you know, just make sure you keep that in balance, and then yes, people will go for it.
Yeah, I think if you make it easy and make it make sense, so it looks like frosting on top of a cake, they'll go for it for sure.
Cool. So yeah, yes, all good. Do keep doing that in your games. I'm going to go back to some of my questions now. Please do keep throwing in your questions to the Q&A. It's great to have so many people engaged. One thing I was kind of wondering about, we're talking a lot about ad revenue because obviously that's kind of what we're looking at here in this topic of the talk. But should developers with an ad-only approach also diversify into other types of monetization? So in-app purchases, and we're seeing subscriptions start to rise. Should, if you've only got ads, should you also be using these kinds of monetizations as well?
Say as long as it makes sense for the game. It's, you know, first of all, diversifying is always good. If you have in-app purchases in your game, then you know, even if you're just gonna find one in 1,000 players who's willing to spend that money, then it's still, I mean, you know, if they just buy something for $8, just that one person, just like calculate how many thousand ad views you need to get the same amount of revenue. So yeah, it's always worth it to diversify and to you know, basically spread your chances. But yeah, like I said, it needs to make sense for your game. If you have a hyper casual game, then in-app purchases are probably going to make a lot less sense than when you have a full-blown RPG. So, you know, just see what fits.
But again, using ads is a great way to encourage people to spend. So having a balanced monetization strategy is very important. That's for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I agree as well. But diversifying, you definitely reach more players, and some players respond better than different types of ads than others. So some people they would rather buy something from you than to watch ad. So.
Plus, we should always remember the 3%, the average of paying user audience. Mm-hmm. What about the other 97?
And I think it also helps to see, let people see the value of ads. If they see they can buy your coin pack of 100 coins for $5, but they can see that they're going to get 5 coins for free by watching an ad, they're like, well, if I do that 20 times, watch 20 ads, I save myself $5.
I will go back to the Q&A questions. Thank you for that. That was very interesting. So I was very keen to know, sort of a general sort of to ground this whole discussion. By inevitable ad revenue decline, does the panel mean low ARPUs, ECPMs, or both? So in your minds, what are we all actually talking about?
In my mind, there's not much decline. You know, it's, in my mind, it's not inevitable. But it's always good to discuss the possible scenarios of what might happen to ad. You know, what's sort of the trends. What if it goes down? What if it goes up? And you know, I guess anything that we can share to sort of prepare for that.
Yeah, I guess it's the specific sort of like what metrics are you measuring and considering like which one of those is the decline that is worth addressing, I suppose. Sorry, Ilya.
I think I once again I agree that I don't see any decline. That's the thing. But Martine in the beginning said there is a decline on eCPM because of higher volume, and that's true. I think what we're talking about here is an actual eCPM decline. At the moment, there's no significant decline on, or whatever visible decline on ARPDAU. It may happen in the future, and again, that's all speculation, but it's very difficult to judge it now. Very difficult.
Yeah, I would say if there's going to be any decline, it's eCPM because people aren't at home as much. That's the only one I could see as a possibility. But I mean, you go to the restaurant, and when you're waiting for your food, what do? You stare at each other, or you take out your phone. I see people take out their phone a lot more often.
Some people, did you know?
Nobody talks anymore. Don't be ridiculous. Another question from the audience. I think this one is probably going straight to you, Ilya. Will gaming-based ad networks such as Unity Ads and AppLovin, etc., offer high eCPMs because marketing budgets of gaming companies is stable or increased, unlike other brand-based ad networks where ad spend has decreased?
Wow, that's straight in the face. Let me read that one again. So, that's a very difficult question, but we've already seen a similar shift when the whole pandemic just started, when a lot of brands, they just instantly cut off their spend. So our network, well, gaming networks, and from Unity's perspective, I can say that our performance was just like over the clouds, or whatever you call it. And you see, it's not us who determine the eCPM. It's the audience and a lot of different factors. So this question doesn't really have an answer.
Fair enough. Yeah, well, that's that sort of answered. Someone's asked about non-intrusive ad formats. I guess this is sort of a similar thing that we've been saying. Is like, if it makes sense for your game, then you should do it. But do we have feelings about non-intrusive ads? I guess this is stuff like posters with an add-on in the game or that kind of thing. Are those effective in the ad market?
For mostly, well, from what we've tried over the years, is that the actual effort to implement them in sort of a seamless experience in a seamless way, that's so much work that it's actually not worth for what those ads bring us. Thinking, for example, of like a banner, like a big banner placement in the background of the game or something, or branded furniture, or you name it. And yeah, I mean, for us, maybe it's because we don't have a game that has like a multi-million audience. I think our hit game currently has a few hundred thousand daily active users, and with that, it's just not worth it to like spend so much time in implementing that one specific placement for that one specific brand. But for like the top 10 grossing games or something, for them, it might be worth it.
On this one, I can only speak to what my experience with console games and putting on advertisements on billboards in the game, and we didn't really see a lot of, I don't want to say kickback, but direct revenue from it, which is a bummer. But that was then. Maybe it changed. I don't know. But that was several years ago.
Cool. And final question from the Q&A. If you do have any more, please do throw them in there. But I've nearly played through the list. Hooray. It's a very specific one, this one. And apparently it's saying it's important for indies for scaling UA efforts. In order to test if my ad ARPU is greater than CPI, Could you let me know the minimum number of installs, DAUs, and/or ad impression volume I need to achieve, which is statistically significant? I guess you don't need to be exact numbers, but if anyone has any sort of ballpark figures that they can sort of share, that would be helpful for this participant.
Well, on our team, I'm not the numbers person, but what I do know is that when we start running marketing campaigns, we do very small campaigns to kind of test and see if it's worth it, and also to kind of test what those users are worth and how long it takes to basically get a positive return on ad spend. So just going by from what we see, we can already do experiments with just let's say 1,000 users or something, and get reliable results from that.
Yeah, anybody else? Nope. Okay, that's fine. Another question has just dropped in, which handily lets me steer away from that. Anonymous attendee would also like to know any tips for indies to achieve ideal ad frequency.
I can jump in here. So it's important to measure the number of sessions, the length of the sessions, and you don't want to make ad watching time larger or longer than actual playtime. And again, if we consider your game genre, is it hyper casual? Is it casual mid-core? The more casual the genre, for some reason, the more ads you're kind of allowed in an unwritten law to place in your game. Like we see it with hyper casuals, of course. And then the more core, hardcore, mid-core game becomes, you don't want to spam too much because that audience is more sensitive. So if we talk about indie games, again, which genre? Always look at your player feedback. It's very important, getting feedback and listening to what they write in reviews. If they're not happy with the amount, try to reduce the frequency, and actually implementing ad frequency in terms of limits, how many ads you can see within an hour is very important, because well, we as humans, our attention span decreases the more information we consume. So when you see 5 or 10 ads in a row, the likelihood of you engaging with this 10th ad is very low. Algorithms know that, so the eCPM will be most likely very low on this ad. So if you have this two-sided goal, preserving the retention and engagement and player happiness, and having the revenues at normal levels. So finding the balance is important, and do that through, again, A/B testing.
Cool. Thank you all for your questions. If you do have any more, we've still got a couple of minutes. I am just going to turn to something that I was wondering as well, because Ilya just mentioned testing, and you have sort of briefly touched on the kinds of tests. Are there any other specific sort of really granular tests that people can do on their ads to try and increase ad revenue beyond testing how long they are and that kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. What I noticed is, for example, the further in the game an ad placement is, the more eCPM it brings, because this is the source where most loyal players see ads. Mm-hmm. Then second thing, you can start what Michelle mentioned before, segmenting, showing more personalized ads. It's very important. Creating segments based on KPIs or player interests. For example, I've done a speech on this before. Let's take an example. I don't know. Thanks a lot by Boombit, right? So there are players that can be super competitive, that are min-maxers, or there are players that are that have a sole goal of collecting all the parts in the game. So offering an ad placement that, oh, you can get a random new part, will be very appealing to them. Or there's, for example, very competitive players that are losing a couple of trophies is deadly to me. So when they finish a level or a match and they lose, offering them an ad placement to reduce the number of lost trophies will be as well appealing, because they really care about their rating. So going with this approach and doing those personalized placements is very important. And segmenting all goes through KPIs, how much time users spend in this section in the game, how many times they, I don't know, click on this button, and yeah, all the basic metrics, and that's how you segment them.
Cool. Any other thoughts? Nope.
I was gonna. Oh no, sorry. I was gonna say for any ad that you're gonna overall for any ad you're gonna present to your player, because you're taking time away from the game, make sure it has a click through an option. Because like we were talking about the static ads before in games. So for example, in a PS4 game, there's like a billboard ad of, you know, cookies or chips or a drink or something, but there's no follow through. You only see it. So you're like, oh, I like those chips. And then, oh, back to the game. Do you know what I mean? So make sure your ad makes sense.
We do have another question from the audience. What innovations have you seen in the ad monetization space from ad networks and publishers due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic? None, says Martine.
I would just say a lot of publishers are trying to push more value to players to get their attention away from other games. That's about all I've seen.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Cool. We're coming up on time. Obviously, Mike is showing his face. So I do just have one question that I would like to quickly throw out there as sort of a roundup one. How do you think advertising is going to change and evolve over the next 12 months? So even thinking past COVID, thinking past when we go back to normality, whatever that may be, how do you think the advertising space is going to evolve?
I think more publishers that are focusing nowadays only on IIPs and are heavily against ads will in the end implement ads, because they will see that it's not damaging and there are ways to do it in a correct way.
Yeah, I agree with that statement, because you know it's been sort of this ongoing discussion for at least 5 years where people say like, oh, ads are bad, ads are good, etc. But you do see slowly also like from the audience response that, you know, ads are becoming more and more normal, more and more accepted, as long as there's like, you know, value attached to it. So yeah, I think that trend is going to continue for a bit.
I agree too, but I would also add that we have a lot more data, I would say, because people were more, I don't want to say stingy, but they were more likely to test things during this time. So I think we're going to have a lot more data to play with. So it'd be interesting to see how it changes from that too.
And it's actually good timing for them to join I don't want to call it the bandwagon, but the trend, because there are experts that can help you leapfrog whatever all the other publishers have gone through. So you come to a farm where you just pick up the crops. You don't have to do the whole job before that. So that's a good timing for them.
Excellent. Right. That's everything I have and everything we have time for, really. So thank you to the panelists for joining us, and thank you to everybody for watching and throwing in your questions. It's been really good. Thank you all very much.